Well, welcome. My name's Marku Costomo, and I serve as the CEO of Casey. And I'm really delighted to have my colleague Gustavo with me today. Over to you, Gustavo.
Yes, thank you, Marco. My name is Gustavo Santos, and I'm the COO for Casey. And I'm really glad to be here with you guys today.
And today our topic is talking about executive directors in nonprofit organizations, how special these people are, a very tough role. And part of our calling at Casey is to come alongside executive directors and leaders in nonprofits and just support them in fundraising, strategy, execution, implementation. What have you noticed, Gustavo, about executive directors that you've come alongside?
I think they have a very tough job in general, right? So, executive directors usually are also founders in our experience, and that makes them responsible for not only the vision for the organization, but also a lot of the operations, a lot of the day-to-day kind of operation of organization. So I think they have a very tough job in terms of casting vision and also running the show, if you will. And that's part of the challenge that they have. So that's what comes to mind, like front and center when I think about executive directors. Vision and operations. That's what's in my mind right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also another layer because the executive director is the connection between the rest of the organization and the board. So in a way,
Mm,
they're sitting in this in between. Like the board's role is governance and policy and overall strategy, and then the ED's role is to translate that to vision and organizational strategy and operations. And then there's fundraising that crosses the board role and then the organizational role. And that becomes often for an executive director a big part of the workload. Many executive directors are spending 40 to 50% of their time fundraising and carrying that relationships alongside the board and alongside a director of development and other team members. But it
mhm.
does become a pretty heavy load.
Yeah, and I think on this fundraising layer that you just added, I'm thinking here there's also the donors, like another interface, right? Because some of them will have a director of development, for example, to help them. But like most of them, at least like in our experience with Casey, most of them are the face that goes in front of the donors, right? Like they are the ones interacting with donors. And what that makes me think as well, Marco, is all this shifting in terms of audiences. It's a very high cognitive load for anybody. You have to translate, as you said, from the board to the team, and then sometimes from the team to the board, and also from the organization to donors. This is actually exhausting. Just thinking about it now, just kind of thinking about the energy that goes into that translation mode is just amazing how much energy they're spending in that kind of switching, I guess.
Yeah. I spent 17 years as an executive director of both a startup and then operational mode in a nonprofit. And as the organization grew, that the ED role seemed to change and grow. I remember very early days lying awake at night and going, how are we going to fill that $30,000 gap in funding? And then
Mm, mm,
then I used to lie awake 10 years later. It was how are we going to fill that 300,000 gap in funding? uh, the stress was the same level, like so it's sort of proportional. And so I think there is a loneliness in that role as an ED, and I think that's part of why we formed Casey was to be able to come alongside executive directors and other leaders in a nonprofit. The ED role can be a bit lonely in the sense that
mm,
you've got your team that reports to you
mm,
and you
mhm,
report to the board. So you're not really fully a part of the team and you're not really a part
mhm,
of the board. So you're kind of living this leadership role that that can be lonely. And I think that's where I found finding really strong mentors and people
Mm,
walk with me, and maybe other executive connecting with other executive directors and other leaders and business leaders, and just learning from a circle of people that spoke into my life in many different ways, but in a leadership role as well. So I found that was really helpful. Um,
mm, mm. And if I may ask, and maybe put you on the spot here a little bit, what did you find it was helpful for you? So finding those people was something that you mentioned already, but like internally, what kind of posture was helpful for you in those moments?
I think my posture was help me, help me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, but it was also, I think it was also a place of like I really wanted to learn, and
Mm,
there was kind of
mm,
an authentic humility
mm,
that I'm not saying that I was like always authentic and that I was always humble, but I think there was an honest humility, and that was coachable. I wanted to learn from mentors,
mhm,
others.
mm,
And so,
mm,
I remember, a longtime mentor of mine who was leading into helping me with fundraising, and just helping me do the work, which turned out not to be about tactics for fundraising or strategies for fundraising, but I had to do the work of dealing with my perspective on money and all the baggage that I bring from my family of origin, uh,
mm,
and how money connected there, and just having to sort through, like, I said, I'm going to go run this marathon, and then I'm going to fundraise using that. And my mentor said, well, interesting. It's
mm,
Why do you think you need to go run a marathon to be able to ask? Like, why couldn't you just go and ask
mm,
for the money?
mm,
And so there's this kind of weird performance tied to
mm,
my needing to ask meant like, oh, I need to go perform and do something. I just can't go and ask for a good.
mhm,
And so these kind of things come up where, as I learned and was coached and kind of pushed into this, and there's a sense of accountability as well that was really helpful in those conversations, whether it was around fundraising or leadership context, or operational issues, uh,
mm, mhm,
or engaging with board. So I think the mentoring and connecting with others was so helpful. And part of, like, for thinking about Casey and developing Casey over the last few years, and initially was, I was thinking back to my years as an as a young executive director, feeling pretty alone, and had a good skill set, but most of us that end up in nonprofit aren't trained to fundraise initially. We're not
yeah.
necessarily trained to uh, do strategic planning. We usually end up in a nonprofit space because we're compelled by the cause and the mission, um, and we're a good fit for that cause and mission, and we can bring other people together and build a team around that cause and vision and mission. Uh, we were able to bring others in different roles, and build a team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have the background to do strategic planning, business planning,
Yeah.
or fundraising. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
And I can see how that can be isolating as well, right? Like you are in that space where so much depends on you and you running not only the vision, the operations, and now the fundraising task as well. And then it's easy to isolate yourself just to do the tasks. Sometimes you're not well equipped to do them, but then it's harder as well, like to ask for help because you don't have people around you. And then what I hear you saying is like the importance of having someone from outside to walk alongside with you and kind of help you to even ask these questions as your mentor asked you. Why can't you just go and ask, for example? That's a very simple question, but probably you didn't think about it until they asked you, right? So what I'm hearing is that the importance of, in a way, break through the potential isolation actually that comes with the job. It's such a important job, always important, but also very likely all consuming. And it's easy to be kind of closed down, I guess. I think my other question for you would be, what do you think makes a good executive director? Like in terms of qualities, and you touch a little bit on the training that sometimes people do not have to enter a space like this. They have the cause, they have the passion, they are the best person to move that along. But other than that, what makes a good executive director in a position like that, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I was reflecting on this earlier because I've now with Casey worked with dozens of different executive directors who all different personality types in all different stages of an organization. So I think what I wanted to say is that anybody with the intent of wanting to who's called to this role and feels like they're a fit, I think they can make it work. So there's no like any personality can work. And of course, that leadership is going to look different. Um, and then in the different phases of an organization, some people are probably better fit for like there's a founder type that is very driven and can think of like creating something from scratch, and that really excites them and building that early part of the organization in that first 10 years. A founder can do amazing work, or even up to 15 years after that. Often, not always, but often the founder is not able to transition into
Mm,
the next role of what
mm,
is needed as an ED. So I
mm,
think I think the things to think about are the phase of the organization, the the personality type, and what gets the individual excited. But I think
mm,
the being someone who's really excited about the cause or vision is a really good fit for culture of the organization. So sometimes you can bring somebody in to an organization and the culture, they're not a good fit. They're a good fit on paper, but in the culture of the
mm,
organization, they're not necessarily a good fit. And that can
mm,
create challenges in the team and the board. So I think the culture fit is good. Definitely leadership experience doesn't need to be executive director leadership experience, but leading and being open to growing in leadership and being able to articulate a vision. And I think there's a lot of this that people can grow into, so they're not a must have. But there's this ability to work with people from different walks of life. So, board members, team members, donors, other stakeholders, community partners. So, being able to articulate and be comfortable in speaking about the organization and the vision in very different contexts, and sometimes on the spot. So, being having a clear cheat sheet and being able to work from a cheat sheet of communications. And then I think
mm,
fundraising in a smaller, let's say a nonprofit that's a 1 to 5 million or less than a million, but up 5 million up to 5 million and above, the executive director or CEO is really involved in fundraising and needs to be, because major
mm,
donors want. So there needs to be an openness to grow into fundraising, um,
mhm,
and make that a core function of that executive director role. Often people might think, well, I don't need to do it. I'll just hire someone to do that. Having done that, like the executive director role or CEO role, that chair, that leadership chair carries. kind of a voice, an authority, and donors respond to in a particular way. And particularly, some major donors will always want to talk to the ED. Um, so I think, yeah, and then kind of the operational competence, having some experience in managing projects and bringing people together around that. But again, there's room to have coaching come alongside. So if there's any of these areas are that there are gaps, there it's coachable. So I think being coachable is significant. Being open to getting input from mentors, peers that are executive directors, um, is really important. What
Hmm.
what thoughts do you have just hearing me talk through that? Or
Yeah.
what did I miss and what would you add to that, Gustavo?
No, I agree with you. I think these are great characteristics. One thing that I'm curious to hear from you is we have talked about the moment of the organization, which is important, and I'm wondering about the moment of the person as well. So someone like was listening to us, for example. Would you say, Marco, that what's more important, experience or potential? How much the person knows before or at the job, or how much they can grow and kind of grow into the job sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that'll be based on the where the organization is at in the life. So
Okay.
part of that is dependent on where the organization is at. I think when you say experience, I'm going to broaden it out so it's not just executive director experience. It could be other leadership experience. So I think some leadership experience and knowing that's a gift that you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that there's a natural leaning towards being able to lead. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I think one of the things that is a big skill set that's needed is delegation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so you could say that's a leadership skill or a project management skill, but however we put that delegation into play, it's it's a
Yeah.
critical lifeline for for an ED CEO to be able to delegate. And so I think though that kind of experience, you don't need to be in an ED first chair leadership role, but having that kind of experience to bring that in. And then I think from there, being able to grow into the roles and functions of a CEO and ED are fine. Like I think being able to work with a board, that's something you can grow into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are coachable and that you can learn on the job. There are some things, I think carrying like your own well-being and stress, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that I think is going in heads up on saying, hey, this role is maybe more demanding than maybe not in just hours, but it's in
Mm-hmm.
thinking space. Like you're actually carrying
Yeah.
the weight of whether it's the project or staffing or funding issues, you're carrying that weight
Mm.
off hours.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yes.
so it does add a weight and a stress to life that is maybe different than other roles. And I think just learning to do really good self-care and ensure that your well-being. So that if you're a person that already has that in your rhythm of life, that would be something that would be a really strong asset. To answer your question, I don't think the person needs to be fully have full experience, but has aptitude and is willing to learn and is coachable. Um, yeah, and I think a larger organization that's more mature will want more experience. A younger organization might want someone who is really driven by the mission and vision and can make things happen. Kind of, you know, one and one equals four instead of two. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I like what you said about delegation as well, because I think one of the, particularly on the operational side, for example, one of the challenges is how to delegate without abdicate, right? Like delegation is not abdication, which means giving someone else to do something that's key important doesn't necessarily, or it doesn't at all actually, take your responsibility as the person overseeing that. So for EDs, I think that's also a challenge, how to delegate in a way that keeps things moving, and it's not a burden for them anymore, but at the same time they have still have some purview, they have some responsibility, they have still some kind of connection to those tasks or whatever projects we're
Yeah.
talking about. And I've seen this a lot in fundraising, of course, like in our work with Casey as well. That's always like a point of tension, right? Like how much is the ED or the organization in that case externalizing or outsourcing or giving someone else to do the work, right? There are some things that only the ED can
Yeah.
do, right? And there are like many tasks that, either Casey or anybody else that comes alongside to help and can, makes things move a little bit more efficiently. But there are things that only the ED can do. And I remember when you say, in the beginning of the conversation, how donors appreciate, for example, the presence and the passion, and the voice of the executive director. So sometimes it's unavoidable. Actually, I would say probably, I think you would say it's always unavoidable. you know, the ED has to be that person that kind of goes there. But before they get in front of someone to ask for money, there's a lot of work that can be done, and then there's a lot of help that they can have along the way to get them in front of a donor and then do the ask, right? So what I'm hearing you say is that when you talked about delegation, is that kind of, it's something that you can learn as well, like how much to delegate and how much to take for
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. So taking that example, you could have a director of development working really closely with an ED in preparing them to, for all the major donor asks that the ED is responsible for. And often with Casey, we're filling that role as a
Hmm.
director of development, or we're coming alongside both the director of development and the ED and doing that work of preparing, coaching, creating strategy for the ED, and then the ED is prepared and is able to sort of maximize their time to just focusing on the donor relationship and, and not,
Hmm.
not necessarily the preparation for that. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that goes well, and it just also I was thinking, Gustavo, when you were talking about the delegation, and I brought that up too, but it's not just delegation. I think the best kind of delegation is empowerment. It is delegation, but it's empowerment. It's investing in other people so that their careers and vocation is growing.
Nice.
So it's not just this, you know, pass off the plate over here. And I
Yeah.
know you didn't mean that, but be
Yeah. Yeah.
clear that like true delegation is one that is empowering. It's you're inviting others into leadership, and then your
Mhm.
delegation also means that you're letting go of power.
Hmm. Wow.
I think
Yeah.
so. You're a leader that is empowering and letting go of power so
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
actually providing authority. The board provides you with authority, but you're actually delegating that authority and power to others,
Hmm.
which also means that
Hmm.
you need to let people do the thing
Hmm. Hmm.
to
Hmm.
do, uh,
Hmm.
which means you
Hmm.
need to let people fail. Uh,
Hmm.
so that's kind of this, in a way, it's this self-emptying of power and letting people be empowered and do their work and grow in their leadership. So you're investing in future leaders for this your organization or wherever they're called to next, is that they'll be better leaders in their own right.
That's powerful. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's actually in my experience that's actually a counterintuitive, move, but I think you're absolutely right. And I've seen it, how much more this has become relevant. Speaking of leadership around not only nonprofits but in general, like empowering others to do the work means that you're letting power go as well. How do you see not only this, but like in general, thinking about the executive director role? How have you seen it changing over time? Because you have like almost like 30 years of experience in this, and I guess economy has changed, the way people deal with money, for profit, non-profit, organizations have changed, like management theories have changed. When you look at your experience and the EGs that you met in the beginning of your career and now, what do you think has changed since then? And also, how do you see this changing forward? For the future. I think that's also a conversation interesting to have. It's just like, how are things changing? Where would you bet that this is going?
Well, I think leadership has been changing in the especially in the nonprofit space, but also in the business space to be more particular in the impact business space, so mission driven organizations to be um, more holistic, more collaborative, more like things around thinking about things like psychological safety, power dynamics, language, just everything that we maybe are taking for granted now, uh,
Mm-hmm.
as like, hey, this is how we operate. Well, 25 years ago, some of that wasn't that that paradigm didn't exist, or those concerns weren't front and center, or it was the one charismatic leader that called all the shots. Well, that doesn't play very well now. It's got to be collaborative. You need to create a psychological safety in your work environment and culture. You need to build bridges. You need to bring people on board. You need to ensure that there's buy-in. Not that it's becoming a democratic leadership process, but it's becoming more collaborative. And I think there's different, I mean, even today, I mean, we shift gears. Like if, you think of leadership as a stick shift driver, it's not a Tesla. It's that's it's not, you can't just turn off close your eyes and go on autopilot. It leadership is really a stick shift driving, and you're changing modalities, and the more you're comfortable, the less you think about what modality you're in. But you are, I think, and I think that where leadership is going is more need for niche modality of leadership modality. Like sometimes we've got to make a quick decision. So there's no collaboration. I need to make this decision right now. But knowing that, well, most of the time I'm in collaboration mode, or there's a cooperation mode. We're in
Mhm.
different gears, but knowing that you can shift into different gears when it's appropriate. I think that's going to become more important as we continue to grow. And I think AI is going to impact every role,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I'm not sure how much it's impacted ED roles in the nonprofit space yet. I think it's going to be patchy. Some EDs are using it, some aren't using it because of ethical perspectives. But I think being able to use AI as a good partner and a good assistant
Mhm.
will provide uh, EDs a way to problem solve uh, and scale their workload, or deal with their workload in a productive way. And I think that, that's with budget crunches, I think that's going to become a key asset because I think we're heading into a season of more unpredictability. So not more,
Mm,
we've come from a kind of the golden age of fundraising that was there was predictable growth, you
mhm,
know, post COVID. We had this really unpredictable season, and I think we're probably our new normal is unpredictability. Uh,
mhm, mm,
we're not it fundraising isn't going to be as predictable project, so
mm,
nonprofit finance isn't going to be as predictable. So I think we're going to rely on tools that are cost savings for us, not always human powered. I think human powered, uh,
yeah.
but in maximizing the people power with good tools, including AI. So,
Mhm,
so I would be an advocate for wise use of AI, knowledgeable use of AI, and using it in the right places, not across everything. So,
mhm.
yeah,
I'm thinking here as well, one shift that I would probably, I don't know, maybe, yeah, just highlight some things that it's more like an intuition, but like based on the conversations we have with people in our work with Casey as well, is there's a generational shift happening. And when we talk about fundraising, we have a certain group of people that now have disposable income to donate, for example, and these people are getting older, and then you have a new generation that's has entered, like the workforce, I don't know, 30 maybe 20 years ago, and now they're kind of getting to that place of the disposable income as well. And I wonder if these people are now interested in different things than the previous generation was interested in. That means that when you're doing fundraising work, for example, when you bring up topics like AI, technology, and all the things that are current, these people are interested in these things as well, and they want to know how you're using these things to make your job more efficient and all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking of the donors and the people who are usually supporting this nonprofit work with disposable income, that profile is changing as well. So I wonder if executive directors will be well served if they also understand the current themes so that they can relate better to new donors, and they can talk their language, speak their language in a way, and also be able to actually communicate what they're doing in a way that this new generation can understand. So that's something that I'm kind of been thinking about too.
yeah, I think you've got a point there, and I think one addition that I'd make is that as baby boomers pass on, there's like we're in the middle of like the biggest wealth transfer in the world in
Mhm.
world history. That
Mhm.
that's in process. Working at the we're that has started and it'll carry on for another 20 years, 15 years. So there are a lot of younger people who are coming into generational wealth right now and in the next 10 years, so and also people who are coming into the stage of being able to give from their earnings. Yeah, I think it's a completely new profile of donor, and I think being able to engage uh, with their interests in mind are is really helpful. And then it's also things like AI is a patchwork quilt. So not everyone is necessarily supportive, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way. I just mean that people have different experience of that. So it's not. But I think the biggest thing that I could say about that is to relate well and listen. So um, people often think about fundraising as, well, I need to talk a lot and tell the story a lot. I actually think you need to relate well and you also need to listen well and actively, and then tell stories that fit it. That not that they're curated completely, but stories that fit because I, are we it's hard to share the full 360 degrees of our pie, of our charity pie, with one donor always. But if you have one meeting and you listen well, you get to you get to share the piece of the pie that they're most interested in. And I think that's what you're getting at is
Yeah,
um,
right.
yeah.
What makes their heart sing?
Yes, exactly. And often it will be innovation. It will be
Yeah,
data driven. Like what sort of data are you capturing?
that's
AI
right.
to help some of the functionality around the efficiencies of this. So yeah, so I think there are some really good perspectives there.
Hmm. So for us, like to close our time here together, I'd like to ask you one last question. If there's, any executive director, listening to this or watching this right now, what would be like one piece of advice you would give them to become a better ED?
I think the biggest thing that I could say is find community, like other leaders and mentors who have been in your role in the past, and listen and bring your issues, problem solve in life. Don't problem solve by yourself, especially if they're heavy topics. Work it through with somebody else who's been there, or is there. So I would try to find 3 to 4 people that can speak into your life, and into your context, because you then it's you're not alone. You're getting help, uh,
Hmm.
and it's just way more fun. And it's a two-way street. So
That's
uh,
right. That's right.
you will have things that you can offer into the other people's lives, and it doesn't mean that 3 or 4 people are gathering together. I mean, it could be that, but in
Mhm.
my case, it was mostly I love one-on-one conversations. That's my favorite thing to do in the world is to have a one-on-one conversation. Yeah, so that I would have one-on-ones with 3 or 4 different mentors. I think I built a really big mentor list, but I needed extra help. That's why.
That's great. Well, oh, thank you so much, Marco. I think this been a great conversation. I hope people listening to us and watching this take advantage of it.
Thank, thanks, Gustavo. And I just wanted to say that if there are any people that are interested, we'd always cherish coming alongside you as well, and we'd be glad to do that. So you can find us on our website at kc.io, kaci.io. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Gustavo, for uh, taking us through all these wonderful questions.
It's good. My pleasure. See you.